What's happening, everyone? Art at Overtake, and if you've been paying attention, you know we recently released the Overtake silicone turbo inlet for EJ engines. Now we have two different versions, one for the metal intake manifold and one for the plastic, like on 08 to 14 WRXs and 05 to 09 Legacy GTs. Today we're going to be unboxing and installing one in the car right behind me. You got a little sneak preview of the black silicone inlet. The one we're going to install on the car is the red one, so I figured I'd unbox it, show you all the contents, and then we'll get to work on our 2012 WRX over there. You can see it right here. It's the beautiful Overtake silicone red. This is going to match all your other silicone parts in the car, and it's just a really nice piece. You see the logo right here. It's fiber reinforced, so it's nice and solid, but it still has enough give to make installation easy. And then you see all the fitting ports right here. This is what the hardware kit that's supplied is going to install into. So you're going to see a couple clamps, a bolt, this adapter piece for the intake, and then all of your fitting pieces right there. It's going to make for a simple install. So before we get to putting this on, let's take off the factory inlet. I'll show you exactly how to do it. Now that we're under the hood of the car, let's assess the situation. You can see this one is running a front mount intercooler. Normally, if you have a top mount, you're going to want to start by removing that. We're going to focus a lot of our attention in the first part on removing this section here. But before I get to it, how about I pop the intake off to make it a little bit easier for us? Then we'll just start taking these bolts and hoses off. What we have to do up here is pretty self-explanatory. You have a 12 mil bolt down here, a 10 mil right there, and then this Allen wrench head bolt right there. This will all pull out. We also want to take the electrical connections off right here and right here. And then once this is loosened up, we've got some hoses to take off in the back. Next up, what we're going to be doing is removing the hoses off the boost controller. If you're smart like us, you have the Overtake 3-port right here. Just remember your hose orientation and it should be easy to put them back on. I'm going to clip these zip ties off these. And then we can slide this one off of the inlet. You can see we're starting to open up this area a little bit. You can get an idea of all the connections we've already taken off and the ones we still need to remove from the factory inlet. Next, what I'm going to do is get this bracket out of the way. So there's a small hose underneath this sensor. We just pull that off, and we should be able to finagle it out and get access to taking this off. With this big bracket out of the way, that gives us a lot more room to work with. Now these lines we don't have to pull off, we can work around them, but we do need to disconnect it from the inlet. So just sliding this line off right there. And then next I'm going to take this line off as well with a pair of pliers. One of the big things we're trying to get to is the bypass valve recirc hose, and that's way in the middle down there. It's got a big clamp on it. In order to do that, we need to go to the back side of the manifold and get this hose out of the way. So we're going to have a 10 mil here, and then one right there. And you can see there would normally be a third right here, which is missing on ours. It shouldn't be on yours. We've got this plastic crossover hose assembly loosened up. Next, I want to take off the clamp on the passenger side of it. That way we can pull it up and out. That should free up some room for us to work on the back of the inlet. Now that the crossover pipe is loose, we can get it out of the way. And then down here, we can see the PCV has a hose that goes into the inlet, and it's got a press fit clamp on it. We're gonna have to remove this and modify it. With that PCV hose out of the way, we've got clear access to the BPV recirc. It's got a giant clamp on it. Just gotta get on it, loosen it, and then we can pull that right off. The factory inlet is loosey-goosey now. There's one last connection at the turbo. So what we're gonna need to do is slip down a 10 mil to get the factory clamp off.
Throw it away, throw it away.
We got the two inlets side to side, so let's talk about them. First of all, you're gonna notice how much more worse for wear the OEM one is. Now these, especially if they've seen 60, 80, 100,000 miles plus, they're gonna start cracking in sections, especially right around here between kind of the hard and soft transition. This one's still decent, but this car only has like 40,000 miles on it. A majority of them are gonna be on their way out. Now ours is gonna be a lot nicer and bigger. You can see how much it cranes down on the factory one compared to ours. And the really nice thing is we're gonna be able to replace all of these fittings with some fresh ones, so there's not as many leak points as there were on these. Half the time they like to break off when you're taking it out of the car anyway. So what I'm gonna start is undoing the hardware kit, and then we're gonna fit the plastic fittings on each one of these sections to make the install easier for us. I'd like to go over the fittings we have in this kit. As you'll notice, there's two with matching ends, and there's two with a smaller and a wider end, and then you have this piece right here. Now, if you're installing this in an 08 to 14 WRX, don't worry about it. This will be for the 05 to 09 Legacy GT. I'm gonna set that aside, and then what you can do to figure out the orientation of these is just mimic the OEM. You can see in the front is a smaller piece, so we'll put both of those here, and then the bigger pieces would go right there, then one up top, and then all that's left to do is push them in all the way to the end. One thing to mention is this top fitting is gonna need to come out if you don't have your manifold out, because that's gonna be much easier to slide it in, then you can fit it when it goes in. And then also the clamp, make sure to set the orientation so that you make it a little bit easier on yourself. Once it's in, you don't have a whole lot of room. For me, I can go from this angle here and tighten it up nicely. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this is the toughest part of the install. Once you have it kind of where it's supposed to be, getting it seated perfectly and getting the clamp on there and tightened is pretty difficult. If you have extra set of hands, that always helps, especially pushing the inlet from the front and just kind of getting it perfectly seated around the turbo side. With the turbo silicone inlet in place, next up we're gonna have to reconnect the bypass valve crossover hose. If you remember, we have this hose coming off the PCV. This will go to the top end. That was that little fitting that we paused on installing until we got the inlet in. Basically, you want to size it up to where it's going to be, right before the curve right here, and then cut it. Don't forget the clamp that's supplied in our kit, and then slip it on over the fitting. That was the majority of the hard work at the back. We just need to bolt these pipes and hoses back on, that crossover pipe, that's really easy. And then we're gonna move on to the front and get everything connected, reassembled. Back up at the front of the inlet, we have all of these points to reconnect. This rear one is gonna be for that PCV crossover in the back. So we'll get that put on. And then we've got this piece that goes right here on the front. And then this middle port here and these two lines are gonna hook up to the 3-port boost controller. We're gonna skip that for now until we get everything tightened up. This bracket went into place just fine. I just want to remind you to reconnect the hose that you see down here and then the 12 mm bolt. Now the last thing is you'll notice in the kit we supply one little stubby 13 mm bolt. That's for this area right here. So all you have to do is tighten that up, and then we'll move on to the boost controller. If you didn't take note of how to hook the boost controller back up, I'll go over it quick. So our port 2 and 3 are open now. We're gonna need the hose from the wastegate to go on port 2, and then the hose going to the boost source or the turbo on 3. And then number 1, you'll see, is the last connection we need to make on the new inlet. Everything's in place. Now we just have to click in the connectors, probably the easiest part of this install. 1 and 2. When installing the intake side, you notice we provide this plastic connector piece and an extra clamp. So just make sure you get those on, and then you can fit the intake right after that. But there we go, we're all wrapped up with the install on the Overtake silicone turbo inlet. Now I would say this is a medium to a higher end install difficulty, so carve out an afternoon if you have a buddy that can help you out with some of the tighter areas and holding the inlet in place while you tighten things like clamps up, that would be ideal. Now this fitment is going to be for 08 to 14 WRXs just like this one, 05 to 09 Legacies, and even 09 to 13 Forester XTs. We do have another fitment that's going to fit all of the EJ aluminum manifold. That's going to be available on overtakeusa.com along with this. If you guys want to pick up either or, just click the link in the description. You can get to it there. It's going to have all sorts of specs on these that I haven't had time to talk about in this video. So go check it out, pick it up, and of course, if you want to support what we're doing here, follow all our social medias at Overtake USA.
Bro.
At this point, we're going to want to install your Band-Aid. Now with your one good hand, you just need to spread the tabs up top. And then once you have the bandage out, you're going to see it has two white portions. You just lift up the tab right here and then remove the bottom. Take your bleeding finger and go ahead and put the gauze portion in the middle. Just wrap it around like that. You're going to want to put a little pressure on it so it stops the bleeding. And then you can continue out with the recirc hose.